The Atlanta Braves made their first offseason signing, and it was a catcher? Let me tell you who it was and why they did it. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Wednesday, October 22nd. Your choice for news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on social media at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on X, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and an Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. We're proudly part of the Believe Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. October is a fantastic month for sports. So because of that, there's a ton of offers for new customers on FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today to get started. The Atlanta Braves made a signing yesterday. It's not official. The team has not confirmed it, but Bob Nightingale of USA Today has reported that the Atlanta Braves have signed catcher Austin Nola. The name sounds familiar. He is the older brother of Phillies pitcher Aaron Nola. And on its face, this is not a very exciting signing. He's a career .247 hitter across parts of 6 major league seasons. But he's also 35 years old. He didn't even debut till age 29. He's played for Seattle, for San Diego, and for Colorado at the major league level. And then in the minors, he's had more time with other teams, the Brewers, the Royals, and could never really get established into the majors with those clubs. Defensively, he's fine. He's a little better at blocking than framing. He struggles a little bit sometimes controlling the running game. He is a backup catcher in every sense of the word. But kind of as always with some of these things, I think the actual player being signed, and this is no offense to Austin Nola, I don't think the actual player is nearly as intriguing as what it tells us about Atlanta's plans over the winter. Okay, so let's talk about that. Because the two things that I immediately think of when I look at the fact that Atlanta now has Drake Baldwin and Sean Murphy at the major league level, and then the minor league level is Sandy Leone on a minor league deal, Austin Nola on a minor league deal, and Chucky Robinson, they claimed off of waivers from the Dodgers, on the 40-man roster, the first thing that I think of is this is a good sign for Drake Baldwin, right? If you think about immediately after the All-Star break last year is when they really started using Baldwin as a designated hitter. He made 12 DH appearances last year. It felt like more, I know. He made 12 DH appearances. 10 of them came in the second half of the schedule. And it really got started after the All-Star break. And so on July 21st, the Braves called up Sandy Leone to be the third catcher, because that was what freed up the Braves to play the other catcher at DH every day. And to explain the rules here as to why you would want to have a third catcher to run a 2-catcher lineup every day is under MLB rules on designated hitters. Let's hypothetical. Sean Murphy's behind the plate. Drake Baldwin's DHing. If Sean Murphy somehow gets injured and has to leave the game, Baldwin can move from DH to catcher to replace Sean Murphy. But if he does that, you lose your designated hitter. If your DH takes a spot in the field, you lose your designated hitter. And so either your pitchers would need to bat, or you would have to use pinch hitters every single time. So in this hypothetical scenario, if Sean Murphy were to get injured, you would still have an actual catcher to use, but now you're either having to send a pinch hitter up there every single time the DH spot rolls around, or you're having to bat the pitcher there, and neither one of those is great. by having a third catcher on your bench, Sandy Leone, Nola, whoever it is, were Sean Murphy to get hurt, they could slip in and finish the game behind the plate, and you don't have to lose your designated hitter. So that's the explanation for why you would want a third catcher. And that's why I feel like the first thing I think of here is this is good for Drake Baldwin. Because we talked about when you get rid of Marcell Ozuna, I don't mean that derogatorily, but he's a free agent and nobody expects him to come back to Atlanta. When you get rid of Marcell Ozuna, that means you don't have a player that is penciled into the DH spot almost every day in your lineup. And given their representative strengths, right? Baldwin's a better hitter than defender. He's not a terrible defender. Murphy's a better defender than hitter. It makes sense that if you're distributing playtime, Baldwin should be in the lineup more than maybe you would normally run a catcher. And so you could start Murphy behind the plate 4 days a week. You could start Baldwin 3, but you could give Baldwin another 3 days at designated hitter. And having a third catcher on the roster lets you do that. And then the days that Baldwin's behind the plate, you can rotate a Jurickson Profar, Ronald Acuna Jr. If Sean Murphy's hot, you can rotate him through, whatever. The point, I have some ideas on this later in the show as well about other options to rotate through part-time at DH that could really help this team out. But the idea there is you don't run Baldwin into the ground by making him be behind the plate every day so that you can get his bat in the lineup. You can take advantage of Murphy's defense, and you can rotate veterans like Profar and Acuna through a little bit, hopefully keeping them a little bit fresher and a little bit healthier. So the very first thing that I thought of in this situation when I saw that signing was, okay, great. Now you'll have 5 catchers in just these guys at spring, plus whoever else from lower in the system you want to bring up. I would imagine like Nick Montgomery. He was the 5th round pick in 2024. They'll probably invite him up. They'll probably invite one of Tyler Tovey or Adam Zabrowski. They were 2021 draft picks. Luis Parabibre, they got him, I want to say they got him in the course of the season. He was an amateur free agent in 2023. I want to say he was on the IL for a while, but like maybe they want to bring him up. Austin Machado was an undrafted free agent in 2024. Maybe they bring him. You can have, 7, 8 catchers at spring training relatively easily, but you've got a good 4 or 5 major league caliber options to catch bullpens and all of that early in spring training. So that was the first thing I thought of. But the second thing I thought of is, what if this isn't just to have a third catcher on the bench? What if you need one of these guys to be the backup to start the year? We'll talk about that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Delete Me. They make it easy, quick, and safe to remove your personal data online at a time when surveillance and data breaches are common enough that they can make everyone vulnerable. Because data brokers just hoover up your info from wherever they get it on the internet and they sell it to whoever will pay them for it. Oftentimes it's illegal purposes, right? It could be for harassment, identity theft, phishing attempts, and things like that. But now you can protect your privacy with Delete Me. So take control of your data and keep your private life private by signing up for Delete Me now at a special discount for our listeners. Get 20% off your Delete Me plan when you go to joindeleteme.com/HIT and use promo code HIT at checkout. The only way to get this 20% off is to go to joindeleteme.com/HIT and enter promo code HIT at checkout. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby. There was a second reason that I thought about when I saw that the Braves had signed Austin Nola. And again, we're still waiting, as of time of recording this, later in the day on Tuesday, we're still waiting on confirmation from the organization that they've signed him. Typically a minor league deal, they don't put out a press release, but they'll update some of the internal stuff They'll show him on the Gwinnett roster. He'll be in the transaction log, things like that. I would imagine that'll come overnight. By the time the show drops, it's probably already in there. The second thing that I'm thinking about is insurance for Sean Murphy. You may remember when Sean Murphy had the injury and the Braves talked about it, I think it was on a Sunday, maybe, like early September. The Braves said that he was going to have surgery that Thursday in Nashville. Dr. Thomas Bird is a specialist in that area. I believe that is the Nashville Hip Institute. Yeah. Dr. Bird's team physician for the Tennessee Titans. Okay. And I wanted to know more about what was going on, so we connected with the Hospital for Special Surgery up in New York City, and got some questions to Dr. Benedict Nwaku. He's a orthopedic surgeon. He specializes in hips. He, at one point in time, was the team physician for the Chicago White Sox. He's dealt with catchers with this injury before. And one of the first things I noticed is the timeline that the Braves gave was that Murphy would need about 4 months to heal. And so here's the quote. This is from Mark Bowman of MLB.com. It's from his story that came out that day. Murphy will need 4 months to heal, but the Braves are hopeful he'll come to spring training without many restrictions. Okay? So if you assume that September is a wash because he was halfway through the month by the time he had the surgery, fine. October, November, December, January. They report in February around Valentine's Day. He's good to go, right? Dr. Nwaku, who I talked to, who has done procedures just like this and is a specialist in hips, gave me a time frame, a usual time frame of 6 to 8 months. So one of my big concerns was that Sean Murphy wasn't going to be ready for opening day. And the Braves alluded to it. If everything goes right, he'll be ready for opening day. I'm not 100% convinced. And I specifically asked if, being a catcher extended that timeline a little bit. And here's the quote from Dr. Nwaku. Quote, "The catching position presents unique challenges. The deep squatting posture places the hip in a flexed and rotated position that can be particularly demanding after labral surgery. While most athletes can return to play in a 6 to 8 month window, catchers may require a more cautious approach to ensure their hip can tolerate repetitive squatting, blocking, and quick transitions out of the crouch. The core rehab timeline is similar, but the position-specific demands can extend the final return to play progression." What he's saying is that there is a very strong chance that Sean Murphy is not ready for opening day. And again, just to clarify, he has not personally examined Sean Murphy. That he's being treated by somebody else. The doctor who is treating Sean Murphy would never agree to a one-on-one with me. That's just not how it works. But, again, being a specialist in hips, being a researcher in the Sports Medicine Institute there at the Hospital for Special Surgery, he thinks it could take longer. And so getting Nola to add to Sandy Leone and Chucky Robinson may be a little bit of an admission by Atlanta that their initial time frame was a bit optimistic or aggressive. Because if you go 6 to 8 months, even if you give him full credit for September, when he had the surgery 1 or 2 weeks in, you're looking at September, October, November, December, January, February is 6 months. The short end of that timeline is after pitchers and catchers have already reported for spring training. We don't have the official report date yet, but that official report date is usually right around Valentine's Day. I think one year it was the 13th, and I'm like, wait, these guys have to report to spring training and then take their wives on a date in Northport and not back home before they come? And so the early end of that 6 to 8 months would be spring training games start in March. Like, spring training games start at the end of February, actually. And so you'd already missed some games before he was even cleared to do stuff, like cleared to return to play. And if it takes towards the 8-month time frame, you're looking at May before he's back. And so it could legitimately be something where, like, yeah, they want a few more options to replace, with the idea being that, like, hey, we'll just ride Drake Baldwin a little bit early. And this is what Atlanta does. They like to have a 2-catcher system under Alex Anthopoulos. But when a guy misses time, they can just run the other guy a little bit harder. If you remember 2023, Travis d'Arnaud missed a month with a concussion. Sean Murphy made all but like one start that month. Sean Murphy was an Iron Man, and he hit like 300 in that stretch. That's part of the reason we all had the theory that he does really well offensively when he plays almost every day. It's because he got like a month straight of starts, and he hit almost 300. Murphy missed 8 games to start this year. Baldwin started 6 of them. Tromp started 2. And both of the 2 that Tromp started were a day game after a night game, I think. Maybe the Dodgers finale was at night. Either way. And then at the end of the month, when you lost Sean Murphy for the rest of the season, they played 20 games and Baldwin started 17 straight. Started 17 of the 20. St. Leon made 3 starts out of 20 in that stretch. So if Murphy misses a couple weeks, you just ride Baldwin a little bit harder and then Murphy's back. But you have multiple veterans to take a spot on the roster just in case. But remember how I said in that first segment, my initial thought was this is good for Drake Baldwin because that means he's going to play a lot. What if they do still try to add an outfielder or another bat to the roster? Because we all know they're not going to sign Kyle Tucker. Let's be honest. He's out of their comfort zone financially. And the free agent market isn't fantastic if you want an everyday starting caliber outfielder outside of Kyle Tucker and maybe Cody Bellinger. But I do think there are quite a few other options, either via trade or in a part-time role, that would make a lot of sense. I'm going to break that down next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The World Series matchup is set. Toronto Blue Jays, Los Angeles Dodgers. Dodgers are a minus 220 favorite in this series. Again, nobody is shocked here. FanDuel has a ton of props out there for the World Series. Obviously, they have the actual games. They have awards, who's going to win MVP. Your favorites right now, and this is hilarious to me, Shohei Ohtani is obviously the favorite for the MVP of the World Series, plus 165. But after that, it's 2 Toronto Blue Jays. It's Vlad Guerrero at plus 600. It's George Springer at plus 1,000. And then after that, you get Freddie Freeman at plus 1,600, Mookie Betts at plus 1,600, Teoscar at plus 1,700. You start getting the pitchers in here. Blake Snell shows up at plus 2,000. But I just think it's really funny that Toronto legitimately has 2 guys with better odds than anybody but Shohei to be the MVP of the World Series, because it feels like that's what's going to have to happen for Toronto to win, right? Vlad's going to have to go insane. George Springer's going to have another massive hits like he did in Game 7, that big 3-run home run. So take advantage of all of the new offers at FanDuel right now, because all the different sports are going on with basketball and hockey and football, both pro and college and all of that. So visit FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app today to get started. Final segment of Braves Today, Lindsay Crosby. Let's talk about some of these options, because one of the things that we've not said it was required, but we've kind of said the suggestion here is to get some sort of starting caliber outfielder and rotate everybody through the DH spot. And in that first segment, I said that one of the first things I thought of when they signed Nola was this means Drake Baldwin's probably going to be the primary DH. But Alex Anthopoulos is also known for taking multiple tracks at the same time, right? He can both walk and chew gum at the same time. And so it's also just very likely that Nola is the backup plan. The backup plan is have 3 catchers and DH Baldwin a bunch if they're not able to add that big bat. And honestly, there's not a lot of everyday starters on the free agency market. Kind of like I alluded to. Kyle Tucker is the top of the class. He is going to get probably a massive contract with a qualifying offer and all of that. Cody Bellinger is turning down $20 million. He had a $25 million salary. He's taking a $5 million buyout instead. So he's turning down $20 million bucks. He hit 29 homers this year, stole 13 bases, hit 272 with a 125 WRC plus and 4.9 WAR. I don't want to pay the premium that he costs. He won't get a qualifying offer. He's already had one. So that he has that going for him. But I feel like that he was still a little taking advantage of Yankee Stadium. The short porch, all of his homers were to the pull side. He'll get a little bit of that in Atlanta, but not a ton. You don't need him to be the center fielder here. His center field defense actually was like just barely passable, but he wasn't above average as a corner guy. But as the second best outfielder, somebody's going to pay him more than we want to pay him. And so I have 2 trains of thought here. Thought number 1 is combine your pitcher acquisition with your outfielder acquisition. We can go through some of those names. Because we've talked before about like Sonny Gray, and I mentioned, hey, Sonny Gray and Brendan Donovan from the Cardinals together. There's more you can do than just that. Maybe you can't get Brendan Donovan, but you can get Lars Nootbaar. Lars Nootbaar has played all 3 positions. He continues to feel like he's on the verge of breaking out. But from what I've heard, he's not just like a grouchy person like Jared Kelenic was. This would be like the Jared Kelenic deal without as much dead money and with somebody who's actually produced a little bit at the major league level. Like, I don't hate the concept of Lars Nootbaar. I even had him in fantasy this year thinking it was going to be the year he broke out, and he didn't necessarily break out. Only ended up hitting 234. Was a 95 OPS plus. First year, he's been below 100 on that. He's been a really productive outfielder in his career up until this season. Career 242 hitter. And when you look at a lot of the under the hood stuff on Lars Nootbaar, he's not a perfect player, but he hits the ball hard. He doesn't chase a ton. He doesn't whiff a ton. He walks like 11% of the time. He walks pretty well. Sprint speed's slightly below average, but like he can play. He can probably get by in center. Kind of like Bellinger. He can get by in center, but he can be above average in the corners. I like the idea of getting somebody like Lars Nootbaar. Problem here is he does bat lefty. I'm going to get to that in a minute. You can keep pairing up pitchers and outfielders, right? Go to the Twins. For the pitcher, you could try to get Pablo Lopez. You could try to get Joe Ryan. We don't know which one's going to get moved this winter. They might both get moved. Neither one of them might get moved. The dream outfielder to get from there is Byron Buxton. Bring him back home. Again, he's been very outspoken at the trade deadline, like in and around it. He didn't want to waive his no-trade clause. He wants to stay in Minnesota. You have to ask, though, if things have changed, given how much they sold at the deadline. Maybe he's decided, okay, I am open to a trade if it gets me back home to Atlanta. He's an Atlanta native. So, something like that. If that doesn't work, maybe it's Matt Wallner, Trevor Larnach. Maybe there are options that you pick for your outfielder to go with your pitcher. Maybe you call some old friends up with the Los Angeles Angels. Taylor Ward's on the final year of his deal. Maybe they want to get rid of lefty Yusei Kikuchi, shed some of that money. So you get Taylor Ward, you get Yusei Kikuchi, you have a starter, a lefty in your rotation in Kikuchi. You have an outfielder in Taylor Ward who can play both right and left. Maybe you go to the Athletics. This is the lowest quality of all the options, but maybe you go grab somebody like JJ Bleday as a change of scenery candidate, as a throw-in to go get a guy like a Luis Severino. Now, I was a lot higher on Luis Severino before he just completely collapsed, right? There was a story, or there was a idea that Luis Severino was good on the road and bad at home because he didn't like the clubhouse setup in Sacramento. He likes to go to the clubhouse between innings. He can't do that in Sacramento. And like, you still saw some of that. His home ERA was a 6.01. His away ERA was a 3.02. But when you kind of look under the hood at Luis Severino, his expected ERA was a 4.60. A lot of the stuff there isn't great. And he's got money attached to him. That's the other big issue. That deal that he signed, he's going to make $25 million in 2026 with a $22 million player option for 2027, his age 33 season. So you'd have to work out something there with the A's and or find a way to get him to do something about the player option. Atlanta doesn't want that question floating out there of whether or not he'll do that. But that's option number one, is trade for a starter and a outfielder together. The other thing that I want to propose is kind of blending some of these approaches, right? Drake Baldwin's still your primary DH, okay? He DHs 3 or 4 times a week. But rather than trying to add a starting caliber outfielder via trade or via free agency and having to pay the cost or whatever, go out and get a rotational guy and let's call it a day. Get a right-handed platoon hitting outfielder. And I've got 2 names I want to bring you. The first one is Rob Refsnyder, who plays for the Boston Red Sox. Now there's a conversation, like there's reporting out there that he's discussed a new deal with the Boston Red Sox. But the reason that I'm saying, like, hey, you should go try to get Rob Refsnyder is he hits right-handed and he hits left-handers really well. 57 games, 138 plate appearances against lefties in 2025. He hit 302 with a 399 on base and a 560 slug. 19 walks to 32 strikeouts and 138 plate appearances. The OPS plus, the split was 171, which means he was better as a righty against a lefty than, 165. So he was 65% better than the average righty hitting against a lefty. Okay. So Rob Refsnyder, I don't think that would be too terribly expensive. His contract, he made $2.1 million with Boston this year. In 24, he made like 1.85. In 23, he made 1.2. So unless they're paying him a couple $1,000,000, you can probably get him for $2.5 million or so. And again, you don't want him to play against righties. He's not good against righties. He hit .212 against right-handed pitching this year. But against lefties, he raked. He would just give you another component. And the reason I talk about this is because you need somebody who can hit lefties as a righty really well, right? Ozzie Albies, 277. Ronald Acuna Jr., 253. They were fine. But outside of that last season, Marcell Ozuna hit 220. Sean Murphy hit 198. Jurickson Profar hit 263, right? But like, you just didn't have a lot of great production against left-handed pitching. And being able to get a platoon guy in like that, I think could do really good things for you. The other guy that I have for your consideration is Miguel Andujar. Former Yankees prospect, was with the Athletics this year against left-handed pitching as a righty. He hit 389 with a 409 on base and a 578 slug. He wasn't bad against righties either, hitting 290 with a 429 slug. It wasn't a lot of power, but like 93 plate appearances, he hit 4 homers against lefties. It's a small sample size, but in his career, he's also been pretty good against lefties throughout his career. For his career, he's a 297 hitter against lefties. So it's not just small sample size from 1 year. And for Miguel Andujar, unlike Refsnyder, Andujar has also played some first base and even a little bit of third. Like this year, he played 237 innings of third base for the Athletics. He's played first base. He not as much, but he does have some first base time. He has some third base time. He's played mostly left outside of that, but he does have some right field experience as well. So if Austin Riley goes down, he gives you an option to finish a game at third base. If, God forbid, Matt Olson goes down, he gives you an option at first base. Like, he is well-rounded and can do all of these things. And, like, part of me just thinks, hey, rather than... Oh, and he also was not making a lot of money either. Andujar's contract with the Athletics, I think, paid him $3 million. And so, yeah, like, you've got options here. You can probably get one of these two guys for pretty cheap. They can be a bench outfielder that can rotate in at DH or in the field when a lefty starter's on the mound. You can put Baldwin behind the plate because Baldwin does hit lefties well. As a lefty, he hits lefties well, which is the thing that Snit never really wanted the team to let him do until late in the year. Against lefties last year, Drake Baldwin hit .299 with an .818 OPS. He was 46% better than the average left-on-left hitter in baseball last year. So you can put Baldwin behind the plate. You can DH either Profar or Acuna, whoever you want to give a break to, or whichever one of these guys you're more comfortable with, in whichever corner, right? And then you can stick this lefty masher in your lineup as a platoon guy. And guess what? When that lefty pitcher leaves and you're in the bullpen, throw Eli White out there. Now your outfield defense is better. Eli White is gonna be perfectly fine. He's not great against righties. He hit .230. Honestly, he barely even played against lefties. So at that point, just a couple innings. Like, it makes sense to me. And I think it's a way... We talked a couple weeks, like maybe last week or 2 weeks ago, about how you probably didn't have the money to cover everything. This can be a way to get an affordable bat. And you have to understand, they're in there to hit lefties. If you're going to face 2 lefties in that series, they're probably going to start twice. If you're not going to face any lefties, you may only use them as a pinch hitter late. But the point is, it just makes a lot of sense to me. And you still have the ability to run Baldwin out there if you want to. This has been Braves Today for Wednesday, October 22nd. Do me a favor, if you're listening on audio, a 5-star review would be awesome. Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, leave a comment down below. Even the word comment. It just helps spread it to the algorithm, gets more people watching Braves Today. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.